Today we have Anne Currier to the Sara Show, and we're very happy to interview her. I remember the first time I met Anne, we could not stop talking because she had accomplished so much in her life. And I said to myself, when I grow up, I want to be just like her. So please, Anne, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've had a very exciting life. I'm still full of energy, and I come and go as I choose. So I'm 87. A few months I'll be 88, which I think is astonishing, a little scary. But it's been a fascinating life. I've met wonderful people and had wonderful experience. Been at the point of action many, many times. So.
Yes. Annie's worked as a social worker, and she also volunteered as a hospice aide to people who have 6 months or less to live. So because you're a woman of God, I wanted to ask you, how did faith play into your choices of career as a social worker and then as a volunteer?
Well, actually, that was the reason I did go into this field of work. I knew I had a quiet time of prayer. Actually, it was a 2-week silent retreat, which gives you a lot of time to think. And at the time, I was probably my late 30s, maybe close to 40. And I decided that I wanted to work with people who were terminally ill so that they wouldn't be afraid to die. And I had significant family members die, but I was peaceful with it. And so I had to go back to school to get a master's degree, and I was planning to go into a program of pastoral counseling. So it was a religious orientation. But I was told that in order to make a living, I needed to have the social work. Okay. Because that was required by the licensing insurance company. So I took a 3-year program. I continued working, and I took a 3-year program at Fordham, and I was confirmed right along the line. Every place I went, I was confirmed that this is what I definitely wanted to do. I was in social work and getting a professional degree. You do a field placement. So my first field placement was to be a group counselor to a group of volunteers for gay men's health crisis, and this was in graduated in 84, 85, 86. This was 84, 85, 86 that I was in graduate school. So for 2 years I did that. I coordinated a group of volunteers from Gay Men's Health Crisis in a weekly support group, and then also on a one-on-one support person. Then in my 3rd year, because I had to go to school, I only went to class, I had to work, I had to go to school just on the weekend. So I became a full-time worker in the ombudsman's office at Gay Men's Health Crisis in Manhattan. This is right at the height of and also the beginning of the AIDS crisis. So that's what I did. So that confirmed that that's definitely what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Did you learn a lot about dying and the grieving process?
Well, I did, because I was supporting these volunteers who were gay men who were supporting their friends. Their job was, they were volunteers, and I was the support person who supported them. So I got all of their input, and of course all of the training and the courses that I took as well. Yeah, so I did learn a great deal about it. So I went into it. I was nicely paid I worked for Visiting Nurse Service of New York and their hospice program. I worked there for 18 years. Wow. And not as many patients. Well, for a few, I think for the first year or so, I worked at an AIDS unit that was established by the Archdiocese of New York in a hospital. It was a set-up unit. And then I went from there into visiting nurse. Wow. Loved it, yes. Wow. So you learn a great deal about, when you sit with people that are dying and they know they're dying and they're ready and they're scared, or they just want out. what takes so long was a very frequent question.
Yeah, and then the family, they don't want them to go, but they want to go.
Well, they don't know how to talk about it either, so you need to support them. That was a big part, family support. And then, you know, do you need to say goodbye to each other? Do you need to? Yeah.
I did volunteer also to work as a hospice aide, but I never realized how hard it was until my sister was into palliative care, and I had to say goodbye to her 2 hours before she passed. It was the hardest thing that I ever had to do.
Yeah.
Because she was suffering so much, but I wanted her to be with me forever. But one morning, I saw how much she was suffering. I was like, please, I love you so much, but it's okay, you can go. And then 2 hours later, she was gone. And I feel lucky to have been there to say goodbye.
Yes.
And also working as a hospice aide, volunteer, I always felt that I had a lot of friends with God, you know, because holding their hands, and then you know that tomorrow they're not going to be there, and it's the hardest thing, and rewarding as well.
It's precious time, and it's a time for a great many, it's a time of cleaning up your act and cleaning out the closet of all the things that are stashed in your attic.
And make peace with God.
Peace with God, with each other.
Yes.
And also with your own past life. Many of the people that I worked with visiting nurse, the cohort that I ministered to mostly were dying, aging Holocaust survivors.
Wow.
Or veterans from World War II who had come back here as heroes and young men and had benefits, and they felt they were treated as heroes, and yet they had a lot of
grief, a lot of trauma,
or they had a lot of guilt,
yes.
So they never really talked about it.
Yes.
These are the veterans. Now the Holocaust survivors had a lot of support group, but they had a lot of grief too. So it was those were the two big things that. So people had a lot of emotional things that they needed to talk to, and one of my opening interview questions was, "What are you afraid of?" And they, "What do you mean afraid?"
I'm not afraid. I'm a big man.
Everybody's afraid. It's okay to be afraid, and if you're not, we're going to have to talk about that one. So.
I'm sure you let them talk. You make them talk.
Oh yeah, well,
a question. Talk sometimes when I was grieving or I was scared about losing my sister.
Yeah, it was kind of a question. You figure, whoa, where's she coming from? You know, and so they would answer you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I understand you also work with Mother Teresa.
I did. Yes, that was a wonderful experience. When I came back from this 2-week retreat. I knew that I wanted to work with the terminally ill, and the person suggested that I volunteer with Mother Teresa. I lived in New York, New York City. So we volunteered with her, and she had a convent in the Bronx. Actually, she had two. One of them was for the sisters who did ministry to the public, and the other one was for the contemplative, which doesn't mean that they stayed in their own convent, but it was only spiritual works of mercy that they did, and it was a fabulous experience.
Did you get to meet her?
I did meet her. She came to visit very frequently, and everybody said, "Well, what was she like?" And I said, "You know, when she finally came, she came each year to hear the sisters make their vows in June. It was a feast day in June. They made their vows. And everybody was all Twitter about her visit. And it wasn't a letdown, but it was no big deal, because having worked with each of her sisters for, at that time, perhaps 9 or 10 months, they were exactly like the same as she was.
She was humble.
They were humble, they were joyful, they were devoted, they were gracious, they were holy. And that's the wonder of her. She not only had her own spirituality, but she communicated that spirituality to
others.
The whole community. Everybody I ever met in her community had the same virtues and the same spiritual. They had very different personalities. The convent that we worked in was in the South Bronx. They had a marvelous, the superior there was a genius of a woman. She was from India. She had been a high school student of Mother Teresa when Mother Teresa was a teacher in India. So she was a genius at administration, but also at teaching these young people who came in from the street practically. Not from the street, they applied, but they came in at different ages. One time they had people from 22 different countries living there in the same house. So she would take them and she would nurture them and train them, and they had steps along the way, you know, where they went to Italy for 2 years of training and da-da-da-da. You know, they had a program that they followed.
Yeah, and about your work in Haiti, how did you find Haiti? And tell me how you feel about what's going on over there right now, having been with the people, knowing them the way you do.
My trip to Haiti was before I became a social worker. I had always been a big reader of it, you know, and one of the things I was very interested in world events, and of course there was Vatican II, and there was this and there was that, and I came from a deeply religious family. None of them were priests or religious, but they read every morning. The first thing in the morning anybody ever did was prayer. Yeah. You know, even the old ladies, my grandmother's 95th birthday, she did her prayers first, you know. Then she finished a mystery story that had to go back to the library. That was Grandma. And all of my mother's sisters. So I had read in a newspaper article that there was a reverse mission from a church in Washington. It was called the Church of the Savior, and it was reverse mission, the idea to go to Haiti, to a third world country, and learn what they could teach you. And it was from the person that was there. The organization within the church was called the Ministry of Money, and it was run by a man who had been a fundraiser for one of the major football games or something. I forget exactly what, you know.
He was Haitian as well?
Pardon me? No, he was not Haitian. He was American born, but he felt that people, if you went to Haiti, there was the joy that that the people in Haiti could teach you the difference of American culture. And before you went, there was a couple books to read about Haiti, but there was also an essay about how you felt about money. Okay. You know, what your attitude, you know, and I came from a family, when I got married, it was quite a shock to me. In my family, my mother was the eldest of 8 girls, my father was the youngest of 6, a young son. So money was very fluid. These were people that were married right at the end of the Depression. And this one helped that one in this family, and right along the line, it was just the way it was, you know. What was mine, if you had a need, somebody in the family came and met it, you know. When I got married, it was a very different story with my husband's family, because his father was a very successful businessman, but he used money as a beat his chest type, you know. Oh, well, I did this, and he would brag to his friends he did that. I know when my first son was born. He came to the hospital, he says, well, I'll go down to the office and pay the bill. I said, oh, no, we'll pay our own bill, you know, because I knew that through the years, I mean, anybody that could get pregnant as easily as I did, you know, child was born in the first year of our marriage. So I thought, oh, I'm going to listen to this for the rest of my life. I can't afford for you to have a baby, you know. So I figured, oh, this is not going to go. So I said, no. He said, well, this is something I need to do. I said, you're going to do something, give his father a raise.
I'm very surprised that you're talking about your father-in-law, because usually people talk about their mother-in-law from hell. Well, so tell me about your mother. How was she?
I'm not trying to badmouth my father-in-law. I'm just trying to say the attitude of money that I was quite shocked to find was very different. And of course you'd hear him talking to one of his friends at church or something and say, oh, well, da-da-da-da-da-da, his daughter who depended on him for everything, so.
I mean, I have one last question. I mean, I want to know about how does your parenting style differ from your parents or grandparents?
I think it was very much like my mother and father. My mother and father were both teachers, and my mother was the DI, the drill instructor. She definitely was, she had the rules. My father was the one you went to first for everything. He was gentle. They worked as a team, but he grew up on a farm and he was more nurturing. My mother, because she was the eldest of 8 daughters, was kind of in charge of things, so.
I see.
So I learned from them that you could be very gentle, but you had certain rules, and the rules. I never had a curfew. You just got home. If you weren't going to be home when you thought you'd be home, you better call. So they didn't worry.
Oh, that's good. They trusted you.
Yeah. Well, there were flexible rules, and if you broke the rules, you were in trouble. That's all it was. And sometimes it was worth it, You figured, oh, well, I know what the punishment for this will be.
I want to know how it felt to work with gay men during the HIV. Which advice did you have to give them? To protect themselves from HIV. And it's very different from advising a woman, not having a husband or boyfriend using a condom.
The funniest thing that you should ask, because when you first go to Gay Men's Health Crisis as a volunteer, or they give you thorough orientation, and because of my age and my whiteness and the rest of it, this middle-aged married woman. The name of the game in orientation was to make Ann blush. So, and they did. They managed, and every once in a while, I thought, wow. So I was thoroughly oriented, and they figured I could pass muster. I could be a volunteer, and at first, when I went and worked with them as the coordinator of the teams. It was a supportive thing. As a social worker, I was to manage group meetings, but also to support you were the support person if a volunteer was meeting a difficulty with one of his patients that he visited. So everybody knew what the protection was. Certainly the men did. Because they saw they're sick, they were worried about getting sick themselves, and a couple of them got very sick. In fact, my supervisor for the ombudsman called me up, and he said, "I just came back, and I've got I do have COVID, or not COVID, but AIDS, and it's going to my brain, and I'm going to be dead in about 6 months."
Wow.
I said, "Well, sure." He said, "You're going to be here for me?" I said, "Absolutely." He said, "Well, I need a mother." And I was enough older than he. He said, "I can't talk to my parents," but he said, "I need a mother." I said, "Okay, I'll be here." And I was. Yeah. Marvelous person.
Did he tell you how he caught it? How he
Didn't
got it? You don't talk about those things.
No, they had already in the orientation given me, and my first job as a social worker was to work as a counselor at an HIV test site. So before anybody could take the HIV test in New York, you had to have a meeting with the social worker beforehand and after you got the results. And they gave 2 tests, one backed up the other, both given at the same time. But in the opening interview was, why do you think you need the test? So they were either lesser descriptive or more descriptive, didn't matter, it was their behavior. They were either, shooting up, or they were sharing needles, or several of the people were from the street, very near where our office was. Some of them were vets. A couple of them were very prominent business people. So they would say, well, it was a partner.
A partner.
Your partner.
Yeah.
One girl came in, she was 19 years old, she was newly married, and her husband had been in about 6 weeks before, less than 6 weeks, maybe 3 weeks before, and was positive. He walked in the door and you knew that he had, was going to be positive. She was about the same age and looked very much like my daughter, and it was heartbreaking to give her news that she was positive.
Wow.
But part of the interview initially was, do you have support team? If you're, are you sure you want to know? What makes you think you need the test? Are you sure you want to know? Do you have the support for staying clean and sober? Or how are you going to adjust your behavior or in a position to get care if you need it? So that was the initial. Well, then, of course, when they came in, how are you going to cope? That was a whole different side of the story.
Must have been really tough.
So, yeah.
And sometimes you did not get too involved into their lives. Sometimes feel
Well,
sorry.
no, this was strictly a test site. That was not the. Then of course I went to work at an AIDS unit in a hospital. They were just setting it up, and that was.
Fortunately, today people with AIDS, they don't die so easily.
Well, yeah,
they have.
They were
treatment.
just beginning some of the. But working with Gay Men's Health Crisis, the people that ran it, organized it, they were primarily professional people. The great many were professional doctors. My immediate supervisor was a child psychologist. They were social workers. They were, from people who were helpers and knew a couple doctors. In fact, I think one of the main organizers. But it was started by a group of people that had visited. There was the summer vacation spot near New York, and knew each other. Do you
feel that the same-sex marriage would have protected them from getting HIV if they were able to marry, to have one partner, to be committed to only one person?
Well,
instead of
yeah, but that was some of them were, and that's why some of them were, were safe. They had safe practices, or many were in committed relationships, but there was vacation time. There was a lot of behavior. There was a lot of behaviors that were, there were a lot of reasons. Or some entered a committed relationship after they'd had a wild,
Yeah, I know.
haymaking time. So rabble rousing, whatever.
Yeah.
It was the lifestyle, depending. Some people were, didn't matter. It didn't matter. They frequently told me as part of the counseling process, but that was not a factor in it. Frankly,
Yeah, I mean, I'm very impressed because with your faith, because we do have a prayer group together. How did you feel about those things? Because usually, our faith, people of faith closer to God, they tend to be more conservative than others. And you were very open, and you went to Haiti, you worked with Mother Teresa, and you were all over the place.
It depends on how you look at your faith. With your faith, it's sharing and caring.
Yeah.
And if you're sharing and caring, somebody has a problem, or a physical problem, or needs, just needs somebody to hug them, that's what you do. So, no, to me, the level of faith and the level of religious commitment I have is, roll up your sleeves and do what you can. I worked with Mother Teresa. I mean, come on, what do you want from me?
Because some people say, you're not Mother Teresa,
Yeah. She was down there in the ditches all the time, so, yeah.
What have you learned from the people of Haiti? You said something about learning about joy from them.
Oh, the joy was wonderful. It was a wonderful experience. When the first assignment that we had, when I went to Haiti, I went with a group that wanted a kind of an attitude adjustment and, just to learn. And in the mornings, we worked at the House for the Dying, Sanfi, and it was for people who were terminally ill and had no place else to go.
Wow.
And it was the women on one floor and men on another floor, and the volunteers were, according to your gender. So the first or second day, when you came in there, they said, well, what do you want to do? Or what do you want us to do? And we were told that in Haiti, if you're going here, you wear a skirt. You don't wear shorts or pants at that time. I mean, this was, well, I'll tell you what year. It was in 1995. Aristide had just returned to Haiti.
Yeah.
So the place was a wreck. It looked like some of the streets were all destroyed and everything. So anyhow, we went in there, and the first job for volunteers the first day or two was to put lotion on the patients. Well, anybody needed touch, first of all. Secondly, they needed skin care, and that was something you could do without, that was their way of assessing how involved you as a volunteer could be.
And you don't wear a glove, you have to do it.
No, you could. I didn't wear gloves because that's not how it's, AIDS is not communicated that way. Mm-hmm. So we put lotion on. What I was astonished was nobody was overweight. People my age or anything. They had necks like a steel pipe because they had carried heavy loads on their heads.
Not all of them.
Well, the ones that were homeless at that particular time,
that region.
The young, the middle-aged, the elderly, people my age, they had. I mean, you would give them, you were touching them all over, and they had necks that were so strong it was unbelievable.
Yeah. What did you think? Did you come in touch with voodoo? Or did you learn anything
well,
about
we
voodoo
learned
over
a
there?
little bit. Well, we didn't pay much attention to it. Yeah, that was not the we in the morning we worked with the patients. Then we went and had lunch, and then we went sightseeing or some cultural thing that we went to. Mm-hmm. By the way, they had a magnificent cathedral. Had you ever been there? The murals were magnificent. Yeah, and that I guess was destroyed in some of the. It was magnificent.
During the earthquake in 2010.
Yeah, it was utterly destroyed. It was.
Is there anything else you would like to add?
Well, what I learned from the people in Haiti, I mean, it was boring. These people, the young, all these ages together, the women. They had really nothing much to do during the day, but be sick or be, So they had they had this big shower room, and there was a large tub in there, and they would go in and take care of their cleaning themselves, whatever, in the bathroom.
What about your life? If you had to live your life again, would you do it the same way? Would you make the same choices, the same?
Oh yeah, because all my choices paid off really big time.
No regrets?
Whatever, yeah.
Okay.
I dealt with them. You change course here and there. If you have a regret, you figure, oh well, this is it, or I'll struggle through it, or whatever. Yeah.
Any advice for people who want to help others and?
Yeah, do it with a happy spirit.
Thank you for coming to the Sara Show. You have to come back because you have so many stories, and I would like to hear all of them.
Yeah, we'll have to have coffee more often.
And I'm sure that the audience would enjoy knowing more about your life, your kids, and the amazing work that you have done, and what you continue to do in your ministry, at the prayer group, at the facility, with the people there.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming.
Oh, it's my joy to share. Yeah.